You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith, and this is my conversation with Sigurd Wungraven, aka Satyr, from the band Satyricon. The reason for the discussion was to promote Satyricon's then upcoming album called Deep, Calleth Upon Deep, an excellent album. So let's hear what Satyr has to say. Print article or what have you, because mate, you have got a cracking album out. I'm really enjoying this one. I only got it late last night, but I've been a long time fan of the band since about 1996 or so. But I don't know what it is about this one here, but it feels a lot different. It feels very earthen. Is that something you'd agree with?
To me, it's a really spiritual album on many levels. It's an album that well, the title fits really well, to put it like that.
Yep. And yeah. I'm going to take it back a little bit because I mentioned I've been a long-time fan of the band. So I need to offer you a sincere congratulations on an outstanding career, because as far as I'm concerned, you're a rock and roll original, certainly as far as black metal's concerned, but I just call all metal, and whether it's black or death metal these days, I just call it all rock music. But what comes to mind when you look back over the past 25 years of recorded music history under the Satyricon moniker?
Oh, thank you. Things are very different today. When we released our first album, I was 17 and I'm 41 today. When I did these first few records, I'd say there was probably 50, 60 people in Norway that were into this kind of music, and I remember, if there were shows, they would be at the weirdest places, and there was hardly anyone there. You're talking 20 guys or something like that. So black metal was very, very small, and it's not that it's gigantic today, but it's not that small anymore either. And I think that the world is a different place too. Obviously, there's a lot of water under the bridge. I mean, it's just this is all back in 92, 93, 94, 95, around that time, and then the world is such a different place now, and what is interesting is Satyricon is one of the few bands that hasn't, we haven't quit. We, Mayhem, for obvious reasons, quit and then came back together again. Emperor quit, and then they do these anniversary shows from time to time or whatever. But
they're not releasing new music like what you're doing.
No. Yeah. No, they're not a functioning band. And then Immortal took a break, and then they're back on, and now I guess they split into a couple of bands, and there's ABBA, the band, and there's another band called. So there's two Immortal, I guess.
Yep.
So, but Satyricon has been consistently just going.
Yeah. How have you had the stamina to keep going through it all? Because you mentioned that when you first started playing out, certainly it was a similar scene back here, over here in Australia. I mean, we had a very, sadistic execution, slaughter lord bands like that. They were, of course, as well, only playing for 20 people in the suburbs of Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane. And I guess it was similar for you, but those bands by and large have stopped. What's given you the stamina to keep going through all of the trends and changes?
First and foremost, we really love to do this. I'll tell you an interesting story. I just returned from a 10-day vacation, and I said, my wife kept teasing me because she said, I know you want to go home, right? And I said, no, it's fine. And she said, you're full of shit. You want to go home. And I guess, I was happy to be there with her and my sons, but yeah, I wanted to go home. And I figured maybe a lot of the reason why I wanted to go home is that although I work a lot and I'm exhausted and I need a break, a few days is enough. And then, if anything, if I'm going to have a break, then it has to be filled with something meaningful. So to me, to just lie there, by the pool at some hotel resort makes no sense, because I feel like I am surrounded by people who don't like what they do and are just glad to get the fuck away from it all and just
couldn't agree more with that,
there.
mate. It's so true. Yeah, it's so true.
And for me, it's like I love music and I love to work with my band and to indulge in everything that's related to the band. Although some of it might be frustrating and can be sometimes even make furious. But in general, I really like it, and then I don't want to be away from it for a long time. And I think the only time we've ever done something like that was after the Age of Nero. I said, all right, this is enough. We've been touring too much. And in order for the next record to be what I want it to be, and to make sure that, this doesn't, we don't run this ship on autopilot, then we have to take an indefinite break. But it wasn't a break as in terms of an official break. It was a break more in the sense that we said, all right, we're going to turn down offers for shows, and we're going to tell the record company that you can't set any deadlines. We just need to step away from this for a while. So then we did a year and a half without any writing. But that was in the best interest of the future of the band. It wasn't because I was tired of doing this. It was because I felt I needed time to step away a little bit. And I always felt, as a musician, I always felt that criticism is something that you're just gonna have to learn to deal with. You can't. First of all, it shouldn't be a goal in itself that everyone, is supposed to like what you do. What we do is not for everyone, and that's not the intent either. But what I find very problematic in criticism is when there are direct accusations or even insinuations about, not feeling it or not being passionate. And I think to myself that that's probably, that's the one thing you cannot possibly accuse Satyricon of, is lacking passion. This is a band that would be doing this even if no one was watching or listening. Would still be making songs and playing. And the way we look upon Satyricon, it's much like a soccer team that it's an institution that is bigger than the players who make the team. And we look upon a lot of the things that I say, even to my family, I say like, I can't do that because there's Satyricon, and then my family can say, well, here's your family, and I tell them, well, okay, well, that's true, and I love you guys, but what you have to understand is that, before I met you and before you guys were born, Satyricon was there, and if any of you ever were to leave and say "fuck you," Satyricon will still be there, and it's that one thing in my life that I is really on top of the food chain, and I know Frost feels the same way, and that's how it's. That's the reason why we have done this for such a long time, and hopefully also the reason why we're still capable of doing great things is because we truly love what we do.
So you mentioned family there a few times, so it's remiss of me not to ask you about your health, and I hope you don't mind my inquiry here either. Because like many
Okay.
fans, mate, I was concerned for your health and well-being in 2015 after it was announced that you were diagnosed with a brain tumour. So I'm a
Yeah.
husband and I'm also a father as you are, so I felt a deep sense of empathy toward you and your situation and indeed to your family. How are things on
Thank you.
the how are things on the health front though in 2017?
In general, I'm okay. I was lucky in the sense that I didn't have anything. So I had a benign tumor, and what they said to me is just the kind of thing that we're going to have to watch. And when I I ended up in hospital, no one really figured out why I was there, and then obviously MRI scans revealed it. But in the beginning, even the people who saw me wasn't sure that it was necessarily about that, since it was something benign. But then later, I was transferred to the neurosurgeon in Norway with the most experience in these cases, and he said that it's no doubt that it relates to this. Your condition is very typical, and that's the thing about the brain, is that it's not a disaster as long as you don't have a cancerous tumor or anything like that. So in that sense, um, I wasn't hit very hard, unlike so many other people who have much more grave conditions. But I guess the problem is that uh, you're not supposed to have anything there that doesn't belong there. So, that type of thing, and then it was just a lot of it, both for me and my family. It was just about learning, trying to find out how we're gonna, make this work. And I couldn't really understand in the beginning how to relate, and sometimes you don't always understand, like, what's causing problems. So, you know, if you feel bad one day, you ask yourself, is it this, or is it that, kid kept me awake the whole night?
I know that feeling.
Yeah. And or am I just exhausted in general because this project that we're working on is so monumental, So a lot of the time it's just trying to understand, how am I gonna deal with this? And what I've learned is I'm pretty much capable of doing everything that I've always done, but the most important thing is to adjust and listen. So, for example, we had recently. That was probably last week. We're going for lunch, um, and it was supposed to be a big lunch with great wines and everything, and it was just something that I really look forward to. And then I just feel it when I get out of bed that this is just not going to be a good day. And then in the beginning, I would have tried to pull it off regardless. But what I do now, I just say that I don't think doing a big lunch with wine and stuff like that is a great idea for me today. I think it's just not going to help at all, and just pull out and say this is not going to work today. And so it's about being flexible, understanding that you can even turn it around and say that, if I feel bad one day and all of a sudden feel a lot better, I should go to the gym, even if I thought earlier in the day that there's no way I can go to the gym today because I'm not feeling good at all. But if I feel good 3 hours later, then it's important to just try and forget about the fact that I did feel bad earlier in the day and do it. So to be flexible and act upon what I feel like physically is how I cope, and it works well for me.
So you touched on a few things there I'd like to talk about, if that's okay again, mate. So I do follow you on Instagram, but long before we had this thing, social media, so I'm talking about, the early 2000s and the like, you always struck me as a Renaissance man. Now, I don't know whether it was the lyrics that you wrote or the way the phrasing comes across in the albums, the way you've written music, but, wine, food, good health, you don't fit the mainstream's perception that your fierce stage presence projects, that's for sure. So can you tell me a bit about your wine production business, and are there any other similar ventures that you're involved with outside of music?
Well, when it comes to, I'm just going to move into the next room. When it comes to that, I think the most important thing for me has been to try and have something that is important to me outside of music, so that I don't, what should I say, feel stuck, because you can easily. I always thought there was something sad when I saw, musicians at festivals that play in bands that are nothing but a bleak version of what they used to be. And I think to myself that, okay, so these guys, if they did a festival in the early 80s, they were probably paid the equivalent of 50,000 euro to do this show, and today they're going to get paid 5,000 euro, and they can't even afford to have a crew with them, and this is just not going to work out, and it doesn't. And then I ask myself, why do they do it? And I think a lot of the time the answer is because they don't know anything else. They are willing to humiliate themselves because it's not as if they have any other choice. They can't just go and be...
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah, they can't do anything else with their lives. Yeah.
No. So what's important to me is... I thought it's kind of funny that people make fun of Fenris in Darkthrone because it continued working in the Norwegian Postal Service, but it's important to understand that he always said that the reason why he did that is because he didn't want Darkthrone to be a job. He never wanted to play live, and he didn't want to rely financially on Darkthrone. He just wanted to feel free, and he didn't want to be a fighter in that way. And for me, it's not the same, but I kind of I wouldn't have been happy doing what he does, but I to some degree understand where he's coming from with that argument. And to me, I did the Moonfog label for many years, 17 years. And Moonfog is actually back, technically speaking, because we're using the Moonfog label to license our albums to established record labels for the future. But
right, okay.
But so actually, Deep Calleth Upon Deep, even it's Napalm Records, technically the owner of the master is Moonfog. So that's cool. But the thing is that it's just not something that I wanted to continue with. So in 2010, I said to myself, all right, no more. What else could I do on the side that's fun? And that wasn't because it was financially necessary, but because it's necessary for me to feel that I can spend my energy and creativity on other things and have fun with other things and get to know other people and enjoy other types of work, and also learn how to be capable in different aspects of life. And wine became natural to me as I was a wine lover. And probably harder to understand from, like a country from the perspective of Norwegians, because we live in a country where it's too cold to have any wine.
Grow grapes, isn't it, there?
Yeah. But Australia, I guess you guys would see it in a different way, because wine is a natural part of your lives.
Yeah. Well, you're a very cultured bloke, and you're clearly educated, because I do speak to a lot of people who aren't Australian, and they think that we all drink Fosters and all sorts of other shit like that. But you clearly know about our wine culture here, so that's thrilling. Which wines in particular, or is there a particular part of Australia from which the wine comes that you appreciate?
Well, Australia hasn't been as terroir driven as many other countries. Some countries are like certain parts of France. It really, really comes down to the local meso and microclimate and soil composition, but probably not so much in Australia. But I had a tendency to like a lot of wines coming out of the Yarra Valley.
Yeah, sure. Yep, yeah. Victoria. Yep.
Yeah, and I also think that there's some really interesting. I mean, more and more coming out of Australia in the last few years has been more organic wines.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
And they come from all over the country, really. But there are many interesting producers. One of them is Tommy Ruff. He makes some interesting wines, and so in general the organic and natural wine revolution that's been in Australia for the last few years is probably the most interesting things to happen from that perspective. I think that like the flagships of Australia, they needed to so there's a limit to like how long it's going to have to rely on Penfolds, Grange and Henschke and all that. There has to be something else, and I think that just the whole wave of all these small producers making organic wines is the best thing that could.
Yeah, the cottage industry we've got here. The wine that I really appreciate, I'm from Queensland, which is in the northeastern corner. Well, it's a big state, really. It's probably the same size as Scandinavia, to be honest with you, or maybe even bigger. But our the wine that we produce at the dry climate areas, so on the granite belt we call it, out near Stanthorpe, if you can ever get a hold of, if you like sparkling Shiraz, I understand we in Australia produce more of that than anywhere else, but we just don't drink much of it. It all goes overseas, particularly to China, I think. But that's my favourite. It's just bloody hard even to get from here, and it's produced just down the road here from me. So if you can get some of that at a wine fair or something like that, see how it goes.
Yeah.
Cool. Hey, I haven't got much time left, to be honest, mate. I'd love to chat a lot more. It's just one of those things with a lot of the interviews, you know how it is, they're sort of stacked up one after the other. But there is a question I've got for you. How on earth did you get the rights to use? And I mean, this is a compliment, and you can only take it as a compliment because this drawing from Edvard Munch, I take it that a lot of people try to license his drawings and his art, but you've been able to do that. Can you tell me the story behind the album artwork, and how did it come to grace a Satyricon album?
So, after Dark Medieval Times, we did well with the first record, so there was a little bit more money, and then we could finally get like an actual graphic designer to help us work on the cover art, and his name is Hal Bodine, and he later ventured off into moving away from doing, album covers and books and things like that to doing mostly art-related stuff and producing art himself. And I reached out to him, not having talked to him in ages. I reached out to him because I thought, due to the strong spirituality, the substantial depth of this record, the really strong artistic presence, that like he's the type of graphic designer that is right for this record. So I emailed him saying, okay, so I know you're not really doing album covers anymore and things like that, but let me tell you about this record and see what you feel about it. And then he just wrote me back and he said, so I guess this is a offer in the category, an offer I can't refuse. And I would very much like to be a part of this. And I said, great. And then when we had our first conversation, he was asking me about the front cover, and I kept talking about the music and the lyrics and how this all feels. And he said, well, I've been just working on this big catalog job for a couple of books with the Munch Museum. And he said, you're probably not aware of this, but in his will, Edvard Munch, he donated everything that he ever made to the city of Oslo, including stuff that wasn't even never, shown to the
That's
public.
Interesting. Yeah.
And he said, it's just like in that vault, there's all this amazing stuff that the world has never seen. And he said, given that I've just, worked on these two really big projects with the museum, I'm sure that, you could at least see if there's something there that you feel is right for this, and we'll take it from there. And I said, well, how's that even possible? And he said, well, let's just ask, so eventually we started just looking through stuff, and there's all this amazing Edvard Munch stuff that I had, of course, never seen, and I was just, really, really fascinated by the whole thing. And then I said, all right, so these are just like 9,000 of them. How about, you run through this and try and show me, 50 or 100 really interesting things that that would work, and then we'll go from there. And he did. And I started looking through things, and I said, all right, well, that's really cool. I like that. Not such a fan of that one. This is good, but doesn't really work, for an album cover. We would have to crop it too much, things like that. And as I kept going through them, and then I saw this, and I said, oh, wow, that's it.
It certainly fits. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I saw that, I thought to myself, that's crazy, because that looks like it was commissioned. Like, that looked like Satyricon going to Edvard Munch saying, can you, make an album cover for this music? because it just made total sense. And I said to the designer that I don't know how to explain it, but the only thing I can say is I'm very strongly drawn to this illustration, and I can't think of anything else like being the cover. It's such an obvious choice. And I said to him that I feel it's very important to stay true to my ideals in art, because I have quite a lot of art myself in my house. And
Yeah, I saw that picture behind you before. That looked nice.
yeah, and as you see, this is very, very different. Uh, and that's what an artist friend of mine pointed out. He said, what I like about your house is that it doesn't look like it's strictly curated. It's not art chosen to fit a certain style. It's just lots of different style. I have symbolicism, I have contemporary, I have urban art, I have photography, I have lots of different things. And because my policy in art is like, I'm not into a certain style, or I'm not trying to make my house look a certain way. The way I think about it is that if I'm drawn to it, then it's great art. Then, I connect with it. So that was the thing with Kiss of Death by Edvard Munch. Is when I saw that, I thought, oh wow, that's so raw, naked, and powerful, and this is really what this album is about. And then it was the obvious choice, and I was just very happy that the Munch Museum has been so extremely helpful in the process, and it makes us feel proud that somehow there is some sort of small connection with what was not only the greatest Norwegian artist of all time, but just one of the greatest artists.
Full stop. Anywhere, from anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's a wonderful collaboration, because it's a collaboration between two Norwegian icons. You know that, and it's almost like as if he reached out from wherever dimension he might be inhabiting right now and actually helped you create part of your art.
I said to Frost when we were doing a festival in Germany the other day, I said that it was interesting hearing from our webmaster how the Munch illustration caused like a stir of really strong emotions, with people absolutely loving it and people absolutely hating it. And then I thought to myself, that's interesting, because it's from 1898, and when back in the days, Munch was controversial. And it's interesting, like when, as a Norwegian black metal band, 115, 20 years later,
doing the same thing.
doing the same thing, and people, and it stirs all these emotions in people, and that's the interesting thing, about art too, is that a lot of the time what people don't understand when they see something like this is that I had my brother-in-law, he said, I love it, but it looks like a sketch. And I said, well, that's why it's great.
That's what I liked about it. Yep.
Yeah. It's so raw. And if this looked more sort of complete and polished, it wouldn't be the same.
No, agreed.
And that's, sometimes in contemporary art, people will just put a red line across a white piece of paper, frame it, and then say, oh, this is art. And then people see it at a gallery, and they're like, and get pissed off, and they think to themselves, how the fuck is this art? This is just pissing me off. This is bullshit. And it can't be art. But then I always thought to myself, well, what if that is the purpose of the artist, to piss you off?
elicit a response. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. What if he's trying to make you angry? That's his project, and he's doing this bullshit, knowing that it's bullshit because he wants to piss you off. Have you ever thought about that? You know.
Hey, mate, I'm really sorry. I better wrap things up. I've got to race to my next interview, but believe me, I could talk to you for at least another hour, such as the ream of questions that I've got to ask you. And I realise, I apologise, I haven't asked you a question about your wonderful new album, except for the statement that I made at the beginning of our interview, but I did mean it. And I'm just going to read out a little bit of what I've said. I've written, because I've got to review the album, of course, and what have I said here? It's going to be an extraordinarily hard album to best for the blackish metal release of the year. I feel confident saying that, even though I've only been listening to it at least half a dozen times. So I want to offer you congratulations, not just on the album again, but a wonderful career. I'd love to see you down here in Australia, and you know what? I'd love to catch up, and I've just had a thought. I want to share a bottle of sparkling Shiraz with you as well when you come down.
Thank you.
No worries, mate. Okay, all the best. Nice to see you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Catch you. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith, and you are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast. That was my conversation with Sigurd Wungraven, aka Satyr, from the band Satyricon. Really hope you enjoyed that, and thank you so much for listening.